What the hell you expect me to do with them? Try to move.
Everything needed repair, so he got out.
Morning, everybody. This is the BBC Home Service. Here is the first bulletin for today, Saturday, December 14th.
This can is made of aluminium because it's light, it doesn't rust, and it's easy to shape. It's one of the many everyday uses of aluminium. Cooking foil, pots and pans, milk chocolate wrappers, milk bottle tops. It's also widely used in construction. Aluminium window frames and doors, even aluminium telephone boxes. And transport, lorries, buses, underground trains, aircraft. But none of its modern uses in packaging, construction, transport were possible in the mid-19th century. Then only the very rich could afford aluminium. In a lavish film reconstruction commissioned by the Aluminium Corporation of America, we are shown the court of Napoleon III in the 1850s.
Your Majesty, the Countess asked, what is this strange dinner set?
Do you like it?
Oh, but yes, it is lovely and so unusual.
It is a strange new metal called aluminium by Professor Sinclair de Ville of the École Normale.
Do all the tables have the same?
No, only this one. After all, even an emperor must remember the exchequer. The others have to content themselves with ordinary gold and silver.
This scarcity was ironic because aluminium makes up 8% of the Earth's crust, more than any other metal. The mineral bauxite, found mainly in the tropics, can be up to 25% aluminium. But the metal forms extremely strong chemical bonds with oxygen. Separating aluminium commercially from its oxide defeated chemists until a French professor, Henri Sinclair de Ville, took up the challenge.
Could you find a cheaper way?
I like to try, Senior. But you know the pay of a professor?
This is a service for the estate. I'm prepared to place at your disposal whatever funds you may require. Only find a cheaper way.
Yes, Sir. I'm honored with the commission. Your Majesty, Count Walewski. Interesting, but I still don't see...
Ordnance, my dear Walewski. Helmets, breastplates, cartridges. Think what my uncle, the first Napoleon, could have accomplished in the Russian campaign with a mobile army of lightweight equipment.
De Ville's chemical process using sodium and chlorine gas was extremely dangerous. And although 50-fold cheaper, his aluminium was still too expensive for everyday use. Then, in 1886, Frenchman Paul-Louis Héroult devised a way of using electrical energy. In the same year, quite independently, Charles Hall made a similar discovery in America. Here, Hollywood film star Alan Ladd plays the 22-year-old Charles Hall.
Get anything?
Not yet.
Well, it's every last one I could find. Except Mother's cookie jar.
We may have to use that, too. How about breaking up any lumps in the aluminum oxide, will you, Julia, while I make a final check on these connections?
What's it supposed to do?
I dissolve the aluminum oxide in the melted cryolite and pass an electric current through it. If I get current enough, it should separate the aluminum from the oxide.
After several months of experiments helped by his sister, Hall finally succeeded.
Julia, look.
Charles, is that it?
Yes. At last I've got it. Aluminum.
Yes, the 22-year-old boy had found in a woodshed, but world-famous chemists had sought vainly for years. Now one would think he was surely on his way.
In the electrolytic process, a source of direct current is connected to a cell or pot. The cell lining is the cathode or negative electrode, and the block above it is the anode or positive electrode. Both electrodes are made of carbon, a good conductor of electricity. Into the cell goes molten cryolite. The mineral cryolite has the special property of dissolving alumina or aluminium oxide, a white powder derived chemically from bauxite. When the electric current passes through the cell, the aluminium is attracted to the cathode. The oxygen is attracted to the anode, where it reacts to form carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. The pure molten aluminium, denser than the electrolyte solvent, is readily siphoned out of the cell and cast into ingots. The electrolytic process could produce aluminium in bulk, but bulk production required huge amounts of relatively cheap electrical energy. Steam generators were tried at first, but the end product wasn't much cheaper than DeVille aluminium. The key to the success of the electrolytic process was this: water power. In Britain, aluminium smelting was confined until recently to the Scottish Highlands. This dam, finished in 1909, supplies one of the 3 original Scottish smelters. The area has an annual rainfall of 300 centimetres, and 6 miles down the valley, the Kinloch smelter still relies entirely on hydroelectricity. 20 miles away, another hydroelectric scheme powers Britain's largest hydroelectric smelting plant at Loch Harbour near Fort William. Finished in 1929, the powerhouse contains 12 water turbines. These generate the massive amounts of direct current needed to smelt aluminium. Every turbine can generate 10,000 amps in each of 2 separate generators. Hydroelectric power made the electrolytic process commercially feasible. When these turbines first ran, it took about 25,000 kilowatt hours to produce 1 ton of aluminium. Cheap electricity made aluminium competitive with other non-ferrous metals for the first time. This is the cell room of the Kinloch smelter. Individual cells are arranged in rows, their cathodes part sunk into the floor. One daily occupation is the breaking of a crust of cooled cryolite which forms between the anode and the cathode and prevents more white powdered alumina from getting into the cell. Aluminium is regularly sampled from the cryolite solution. The solution or flux solidifies first, so that the molten aluminium can be poured into a mold for analysis. The Kinloch plant, somewhat old-fashioned by today's standards, would be recognizable to anyone who worked here when it opened in 1909, or indeed to inventor Charles Hall. The electrolytic process has remained the sole means of extracting aluminium throughout the 20th century. Earlier in the century, aluminium smelters were dirty, dangerous places. Corrosive fluoride fumes from the cryolite and carbon monoxide fumes from the reaction at the anodes took their toll of the workers' health. Aluminium manufacture has always been science-based, but it was at this time a relatively labor-intensive process. Now that aluminium was comparatively cheap, its advantages could be increasingly exploited. More readily than other metals, it could be rolled into thin sheets. It could also be easily forged or extruded. Its lightness and conductivity made it particularly useful to the electricity industry, but it had to be promoted to conservative manufacturers.
Aluminum wire?
No.
All right, sir, let's forget it. By the way, did I show you these?
What are they?
Pound of copper and a pound of aluminum. Here are two wires that carry the same current. This one made out of a pound of copper. This one out of a pound of aluminum. You see, aluminum wire goes twice as far.
Thought we weren't going to say anything more about it.
It's my last word.
And here's mine, Mr. Colby. We're building a new power line from Blue Lakes to Stockton. 46 miles, three-phase line. That means 138 miles of wire. #1 gauge. When can we have it?
Why, as soon as possible. I'll have to let you know.
All right.
When no one else would make their wire, there was nothing left but to buy their own wire mill and make it themselves. Later, they stranded aluminum wire around a steel wire core to increase the strength of the conductor. And there's something that often happens. Aluminum teams up with another metal to use the best qualities of each and expand the use of both.
A symbiotic relationship had emerged between the aluminium and electrical industries. But there were other markets. The most familiar use of aluminium in the 1920s and 30s was in cooking utensils. Aluminium replaced heavy cast iron as the common material for saucepans. It was light, it was a good conductor of heat, and it was unbreakable. The changing uses of aluminium are nicely demonstrated in this series of cameras. This one, a handmade professional's camera from around the turn of the century, uses aluminium where its predecessor would have used brass, partly to show that its owner had the latest model. This camera from 1915 is a Kodak camera, much favoured by soldiers in the First World War. Its aluminium body makes it light, easy to use, and easy to mass produce. The Eastman Kodak Company sold 2 million of these. Finally, the famous Brownie box camera from about 1930. Again, its aluminium body makes it light and easy to use, and even easier to mass produce. Aluminium was also used in cars, especially engines. Until 1929, Austin 7s had an aluminium body. Many of the early cars did. But pound for pound, aluminium was 10 times as expensive as steel. It proved too costly for manufacturers of high turnover mass market cars. But the greatest need for a light metal was felt in the new aviation industries. From the start, aluminium was used extensively in engines. Airships pioneered the use of aluminium in the airframes as well. The R100 relied for its strength and lightness on an aluminium alloy. Duralumin was patented in 1909. Alloying with copper, magnesium and manganese gave a material with an extremely high strength-to-weight ratio. The 700-foot-long R100 enjoyed a brief success, crossing the Atlantic in July 1930. Then in October of that year, a rival airship, the R101, crashed in France, killing 38 people. The days of commercial airships were numbered, but in any case they were being outperformed by aeroplanes now made of aluminium rather than wood.
This is the first of a fleet of 8 giant Handley Page airliners built for the Empire Air Routes, operated by Imperial Airways.
Corrugated panels of aluminium gave extra stiffness, and it was also used for the inner frame. But aluminium's strength allowed more radical designs than the conservative Handley Page biplane. Stretching the outer panels over the frame meant that both panels and frame bore the load. Both could be made lighter and less rigid. The stressed skin principle, as it was called, gave the aircraft greater strength for reduced weight. All metal monoplanes were now possible. Payloads could be greater. For the first time, airlines could operate at a profit without government subsidy. Nazi Germany, too, exploited the advantages of the new aircraft designs. Soon, there would be a huge new demand for aluminium.
how the housewife is helping the Royal Air Force. Minister of Aircraft Production, Lord Beaverbrook, appealed for aluminium pots and pans, new and old, every description, to turn into Spitfires and Hurricanes and Blenheims. The housewife made a terrific response to the appeal, bless her. Much of the world's aluminium came from France, and that is why we need pots and pans. So take all you can to your nearest Women's Volunteer Service depot. Make this your motto.
The effect of this propaganda exercise was more to boost public morale than to provide aviation quality aluminium. To supply the aircraft manufacturers, the state effectively took control of the aluminium industry to expand primary capacity. The Second World War boosted the aluminium industry in a quite remarkable way. World output more than doubled to 2 million tons per year. Britain and the United States alone built 380,000 aircraft in the course of the Second World War. Aluminium had permitted aerial warfare and destruction on a scale hitherto unimagined. At the end of the war, the demand for aluminium suddenly went into reverse. Stockpiles of broken up aircraft were melted down. New outlets were desperately needed. With government support, Britain's aircraft industry transferred some of its capacity to a new venture, the prefabricated aluminium bungalow.
Things are moving too at Wythenshawe, Manchester. Swinging from under the tarpaulin is the latest thing in homes. Running into place on rollers, it's an aluminium house. Everything ultra-modern, it has one old-fashioned drawback. When you kick it, it gives out a rather embarrassing sound.
55,000 of these prefabs were mass-produced using aircraft production techniques.
On the inside, cupboards and fittings are already fixed. A metalworker's dream all set for new homes in Aluminium Avenue.
For rebuilding cities devastated by war, instant prefabricated houses seemed ideal. But beating bombers into bungalows, as the Illustrated London News put it, was never a permanent solution. As soon as traditional labour and materials markets were re-established after the war, conventional houses would replace these alloy ones. But it's ironic that the aluminium bombers which devastated European homes by the thousand were themselves converted into homes. Post-war overcapacity in aluminium was a worldwide problem.
Kingston, Ontario, where Canada's giant wartime aluminium industry takes on a vital peacetime assignment. Pure aluminium, alloyed with copper, nickel, and other metals, is processed on this massive rolling mill. First step in the Dominion's novel plan to meet the housing shortage by turning out metal homes. Simple to work. The metal sheets cut to pattern as easily as making a dress. Assembling is easy too, making the new canned houses a handyman's dream. The walls are fixed weatherboard style, guaranteed wind, cold, and weatherproof. Put together jigsaw fashion on an assembly line, Canada rates the aluminium house among the world's best prefabs. The finished house has 2 bedrooms, a living room and kitchen, oh yes, and bathroom. They've got everything, except perhaps a can opener to get out when the door jams.
Aluminium houses were a dead end and didn't solve the overcapacity problem.
When there are more of them,
Salesmen were sent out to promote the benefits of the material and identify new markets. One was transport. In 1948, when steel was scarce, London Transport decided to use aluminium for the body shells of some of its new District Line coaches. Aluminium trains wouldn't corrode, and so painting could be dispensed with. Aluminium was particularly suited to commuter transport because its lightness reduced the power needed for constant stopping and starting. The bodywork of each coach weighed about 1/3 less than its steel predecessor. The new trains proved their worth in the early 1950s. But initially, there was a tremendous skepticism about the new material, and the experiment was confined to the District Line. A bigger, more established customer was the passenger aircraft industry.
After a 6.5-year break, Pan American World Airways restart their twice-weekly transatlantic service. 4-engine Douglas aircraft leased from the Army are being used till the new peacetime airliners begin to roll off the production lines. Before the war, flying boats were used. This trip is the first American transatlantic passenger flight in a land plane.
For Britain's post-war aircraft industry, the first effort was just as much of a dead end as the aluminium house. The Bristol Brabazon was a luxury airliner with sleeping berths and dining rooms. It was unsuited to a new age of mass travel. But more commercially viable aircraft came along. The Vickers Viscount was one. Soon after came the de Havilland Comet, the first commercial jet passenger airliner. By the early 1950s, the aluminium industry had started to take off again. But it's a continuing irony in the history of this everyday metal that it took another war, this time the Korean War, to solve the industry's problems of overcapacity. Fairly soon, new peacetime markets, construction, packaging, civil aviation, helped make aluminium a world metal second only to iron and steel. Nevertheless, the industry still had to spend much of its energy in trying to displace proven materials like steel, copper, and tin plate. America led the way in developing new markets for aluminium. Nothing perhaps symbolizes their promotional drive better than this self-congratulatory film with its military overtones.
This is aluminum. Aluminum for our industries and aluminum for our homes. Aluminum for building, for transportation, for communication, for agriculture, and for national defense. Aluminum is transformed into 100,000 useful things, from the most delicate and decorative to the most formidable and functional, like these gleaming highway giants. From convenient kitchen containers to home insulation, refrigerators, and farm buildings, automobile parts, and engine components, building materials, and Reynolds wrap, outdoor furniture, and home appliances, high-fashion dresses, and packaging material. Only a few of the things in the almost endless procession that makes up aluminum on the march. This never-ending march of aluminum continues, an ever-growing parade, supplying the thousands of parts which form the products of today and the better products of tomorrow.
Next month's programme in this series looks back to the origins of the 20th century's love affair with the car. You can see Wheels of Progress on Saturday the 16th of May at 2:10 in the afternoon. The last programme for the Open University here on 2 today comes from the course on culture and belief in Europe. The Spanish city of Seville had a monopoly on trade with the New World during the 16th century. David Goodman discovers how the wealth brought by this trade affected the city. In Seville, gateway to the Indies.
It was found that it takes up to